Hey y'all, I'm Allison Asarch from Nashville, Tennessee.
Hey, I'm Sean Fraser from the Ritzy Kids.
Hunters, this is Johnny from Rail Motor.
Hey, it's Shane from Blind Season.
Hey, it's Rob Stanier, and you can check out my music on all the streaming platforms.
Check out my latest music on all the streaming sites.
Check out my debut album on all streaming platforms.
Check out our new debut album.
Check us out on Spotify and Apple Music, and you're listening to our friends Braggy and Curly.
My favorite bands from Australia.
My two favourite podcasters,
Braggy and Curly.
Braggy and Curly.
On the
Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast.
Hey there, everyone. It's Curly here. Welcome to episode 106 of the Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast. Just a quick public service announcement before we get into the episode. Now, in this episode, we're really excited to speak with Ray Walmsley, who was a member of the British band Demon for 24 years. Now, Demon are considered important in the new wave of British heavy metal movement. And they were originally formed by Dave Hill from Leek in Staffordshire. Now, the British new wave of British heavy metal spawned bands like Def Leppard, Judas Priest, and Motorhead, just to name just a few. And the first two albums from Demon were considered, quite rightly, to be right up there with the best. The band's albums were Night of the Demon and The Unexpected Guest, but it is their third album released in 1983 called The Plague, which is considered quite a classic. Now, unfortunately, the internet from the UK didn't play well, and this impacts the recording of Ray throughout this show. It is noticeable both visually and from an audio sense. And while we've endeavored to decrease the impacts of some of the ghosts and the gremlins from the internet, we really do hope that it doesn't impact your enjoyment. We really enjoyed this conversation with Ray, and we are really hopeful that both Ray and maybe the lead singer and founder Dave Hill will join us again on a later episode, hopefully once we get some of these UK internet bugs out of the way. But to start the episode, I'm going to hand over to Demon playing live at the Swedish Rock Festival. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to episode 106 of the Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast. Today, we've got a really exciting show. We are speaking with someone who was part of what's now known as the new wave of British heavy metal, going back to the 1980s. Let's introduce Braggy down there in Adelaide. We've got Peter Ross in Sydney, and we've got Ray Walmsley, who spent 24 years in a band called Demon, coming to us from Leek in Staffordshire. How are we all?
Fantastic, mate. Fantastic.
I'm good, Curly. Lovely.
Hi, guys.
So Ray, I met you at a wedding of all places, and being a wedding singer is probably not the place that you would expect to find a former guitarist who spent 24 years in a heavy metal band. So tell us, so first up, Leek is where Demon came from. Leek came.
I'm not really a wedding singer.
No, no. I was saying that to Braggy. I said, as a wedding singer, I think Ray makes a really good bass player for a heavy metal band. But I think you agree, Ray, correct?
It's cruel but true.
Cruel but fair.
Yes, indeed.
So let's talk about Leek Staffordshire first. Like, Leek's a little place. There's 20,000 people. I think it was once known for having the most pubs per capita in England. How does a heavy metal band drive into mainstream sort of consciousness out of a little country town?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, Leek's always been one of those towns where there's, a huge pool of talent. We've had some quite famous people have come from here and from around here. There was a band in the 70s called Hunter, and they were from Leek, and they were one of the first sort of bands in this area to get a record deal, which in the 70s was a big deal, But yeah, there's always been a pool of talent, and Demon really came about by two guys. The main people that formed Demon was Dave Hill, who's the lead singer, and he worked with a guitar player called Mal Spooner. And together they'd been writing quite a lot through the 70s, and they did some writing for companies and produced songs for other people and stuff. So their partnership was the foundation of what Demon would become.
And it like that era. I mean, it's kind of 79, 80, I guess, is around that time, that coming out of punk, wasn't it? So was it was it a bit of a do-it-yourself thing? I mean, I think that's what punk gave to the rest of to music, really, was just the ability to get out and do it yourself, make records yourself, and promote them yourself, and go and find places to play. Was it kind of like that for the heavy metal scene as well?
There was an element of... Yeah, I think it was. Certainly true to say that in Demon's case. They basically built it up themselves. I don't think there was any plan to become, a successful band. They had the dreams like everybody did. But Dave and Mal were basically writers, and they ended up writing, a whole bunch of songs that became, some of Demon's first material, and that's how it kind of got going.
And it did start off, like it's a live concern. It was a live band. From all my research, it says that the band was very well regarded for its live performances, and they were kind of quite stunning at times. Is that correct?
Well, in the history of the band, from their incarnation, they kind of stumbled into becoming Demon, and like I say, they'd written a load of songs, and they needed an angle. They met a gentleman from Stoke-on-Trent called Mike Stone, who became the manager of Demon, and he owned a company called Clay Records. Now, Clay Records are quite a famous record label in the punk sort of era. He was famous for GBH and a few others, and had like a kind of a cult following. And he was the guy that funded and promoted the first two Demon albums, which became very famous very quickly, really. They seemed to make a mark,
Yeah. How did you come about, Ray, to join it? So you joined in the 90s. How did it come about that you joined Demon?
Well, I joined, I started working with the singer Dave Hill around about 94, 95. We started getting together to write songs together. And the connection was there that Dave is, he was like my kind of uncle's brother-in-law. So there was a bit of a distant family connection. So I'd known Dave for many years, and I've always been a fan of Demon as well. So right from the offshoot, I used to stand in the queues to get the album signed. And so it's quite funny that I ended up becoming part of the band. And my old guitar teacher, when I first started learning guitar, my guitar teacher was the guitar player in Demon, and his name was Johnny Waterhouse. So there was a connection there. And so I knew Dave, and we sat down and we started writing songs, and that was around about 94, 95. And then the first Demon gig that we did, we were invited to play a festival in Germany called the Bang Your Head Festival. So we basically, the band really didn't exist at that time. It hadn't split up or anything, but it was on a bit of a hiatus. So Dave made some calls and got some of the people that he'd been working with back involved. And we did our first gig in Germany in August, I think it was, maybe September of 97. And that was the Bang Your Head Festival, which is now grown to become a huge festival in Germany.
I want to know why, this is a question kind of out of the blue. I want to know why heavy metal music, or metal music to extent, is so popular in those northern, in Scandinavia and those northern places. Is it because they spend a lot of time in the dark? I don't know what it's.
Ouch!
I don't really know why, but no, I didn't mean it like that. I mean, it's kind of, is it a kind of outlet? Because, and I guess a lot of the subject matter that you guys sing about too is mythical, and there's a lot of that sort of stuff in, Norse mythology. I don't know. But it's true, isn't it? They're kind of really popular. Even AC/DC are more popular up there than they are.
It is true. It is true. Yeah, it's definitely true, and it's a bit of a weird situation. I certainly think the European countries and the Scandinavian countries really embrace heavy rock and heavy metal far more than we do here in the UK. And my experience being in Demon is that when we've travelled abroad and been lucky enough to do these big festivals and these tours across Europe and stuff, that we're always treated far better and with far more respect than we ever are in our own country. It's a little bit frowned. Maybe frown's not the right word, but dismissed very easily in this country. But the Scandinavians and the Europeans, they have a great love for heavy rock and heavy metal, and I'm not quite sure why they are more passionate and more respectful. I'm not sure what the reason for that is.
My experience with Europe is, and it's the same for us Australians, when we go to Europe, the respect you get there is much better. They treat you as the touring musicians better than they do in our own country.
Well, that's right, and that was a great experience of being in Demon, and always the most fun that we would ever do would be when we did these festivals and tours abroad, because we were treated with great respect. We were treated like stars, and everything that we needed within reason. We weren't a massive famous band, but everything that we needed was laid on, and we always had people looking after us, and it was a fabulous experience. Yeah. And they're very respectful to the art. And that was my point with the UK. We don't get the same respect in this country. We could go and do a festival in Sweden, be treated like royalty, and maybe playing back in the UK a few days later, and we'd have to get changed.
Look, the thing is about heavy music as well is that it's not popular on radio or television and what have you. So the people who love that music actively have to go out, seek it, and find it for themselves. And so you find in those crowds that there's a camaraderie, there's a brotherhood in the fans, because they all are there because they love the music. They're not there because it's a scene thing. They're there because it's what they dig, And that whole British scene that you've come out of, like all those bands,
and it never goes away.
It never does. It's always it's an omnipresent thing, and it has its renaissance every 10 years or so, and it makes me happy when they do.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I don't think it's ever really gone out of fashion, because it was never major fashion anyway. So it's always just ticked along, behind the kind of mainstream, ebb and flow. You know, it's always been there, and you know, people still love that style of music.
The North,
very passionate.
the North.
Yeah, I guess there's you know, even punk. There's pop punk. You know, so
Never.
but there's no pop metal.
Oh, there's Baby Metal. Have you seen Baby Metal, the Japanese band?
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
No
Yeah.
pop metal.
Baby.
You might have hit on a good pop metal. That could be something to take forward and see if I can do anything with.
I know, just the guys.
Ray, one of the things that strikes me when I read up about Demon is that many articles or publications call the band important to that time of new wave heavy metal. Yet, when you think about the big names, you know, the Def Leppards and, you know, Motorhead, etc., but Demon has got this thing that they were an important part of the new wave sweep. Why was the band considered so important yet never reached potentially the heights of some of those other bands?
That's a good question. I think it's considered important because if you listen to the material on the first two albums, it's stunning songwriting, great songs, great performances, and it really had an impact on the people because that new wave of British heavy metal was a new thing, and it was born at the end of the punk era. It was perhaps a more intellectual extension of that to some degree, but Demon's albums, and this is my own opinion, are probably some of the best that came out of that original wave of new British heavy metal. Fabulous songwriting. I mean, Dave Hill, who is the singer and the lyricist, his lyrics are absolutely fabulous. He's got a real way of painting pictures in your mind, you know, and telling great stories in very clever ways. And I consider the Demon albums, you know, to be really the cream of the crop of that era. Even though, you know, after that, the success never developed for Demon in the way that it did for Motorhead or for Iron Maiden, or Saxon was another band that came from the same stable. Judas Priest, yeah.
Yeah, there's so many. So why do you think that is, Ray? What you know, what went wrong?
Well, I mean, that is it's almost an impossible to answer question, that, because it can be a variety of things. Sometimes the face didn't fit. I mean, after those classic two albums, Demon took quite, what shall we say, a left turn in terms of where those first two albums appeared to set them up to going. And now they did an album called The Plague, and I mentioned to you, Tony, when we were at the wedding, that with the album The Plague, which was a very progressive rock album, and it went up a gear, certainly for Demon in terms of production, because it was recorded in a fabulous studio in London. I think it was Psalm East. Mike oversaw all that, and he had a top producer. It was a fabulous sounding album, but it was a complete deviation from what the first two albums had set them out to be. So Night and the Demon and The Unexpected Guest had very much a devilish kind of, you know, demonic quality. They weren't writing, you know, there was some very deep lyrics in that, you know. But then The Plague went off and made a very kind of social statement of how life was in those early 80s. And on that strength of that album, The Plague, they actually got contacted by Warner Brothers in America, I think, and Atlantic Records, and they signed Demon in 1983. Now, at that point, Demon thought they were about ready to take off, because they'd gone from Carrera Records
to one of the majors,
who had Roaster 2, which was an Australian band. Yeah, and they'd gone on to one of the major labels. So Atlantic were huge at the time, and they loved the production on the album. They had a keyboard player who played on that album, who went on to become quite famous and played with Frankie Goes to Hollywood, a huge British pop band. But I think it was perhaps the deviation of where they'd gone from those first two albums to where The Plague took them, and then they got stuck in a kind of a contractual sort of situation where, Atlantic released the record but did nothing to promote it, and then basically just dropped them. So they had to get out of that before they could do another album. Demon, it's a little bit of a mystery, because Demon's material is as good as anything anybody has done in that arena to me, and it's quite puzzling that nobody's kind of picked up on it. And Matt, I hope that explains some of that.
The progressive, the shift to prog, which I did read about. Nowadays, there's cleavages. There is a lot of what they call prog metal bands. So, like, could it be that they were just which often happens, just really ahead of the curve? People weren't ready to go with it.
Yeah, maybe.
Like that's often the case. Like.
Well, I definitely think that the Plague album and it's one of Demon's best albums. They probably should have done it further down the line. They should have perhaps capitalized on the success of the first two albums being that kind of demonic sort of darker element, and maybe done a couple more albums in that style. That would have perhaps set them up and put them further the ladder.
Sabbath went to a bit Dragons.
But I mean, the Plague's now considered a classic.
Sabbath went a bit Dragons around 1982, and all sort of like mythology and all that sort of stuff. They'd gone from Ozzy to Ronnie Dio by that stage, Another northern band.
Yeah.
Hey Ray, tell us about how.
But none of those bands did Yeah.
I was going to say, tell us about how you got started in the music business, like before you joined. Tell us about how you kicked off. What got you interested?
Well, I was a bit of a late starter. I didn't pick up a guitar till I was like 18, maybe nearly 19, and I'd left school and had to face the drama of going to work and earning a living and doing all that, and it didn't sit very comfortably with me. So I picked up a guitar as a kind of a way to find something, to really look forward to, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I worked like crazy in those very first early years, practicing and playing. And I suppose, like anybody, when you're young, you have your dreams to be in a rock band and make records and travel the world, be rich and famous. I've done a little bit of that, but
where's my money?
Never really came.
Yeah,
but yeah, so I just started, and I've been very because Demon is a local band, and like I say, there was a family connection with the singer Dave, whose band it was, and. I was working hard on lots of other bands, so
a long stint in the band. You played both. Yeah, you start off as a guitar player, then you got upgraded to the most significant role in the band as a bass player. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, it was just a collection of circumstances, really. I took a small hiatus away from the band in about 2009, 2010. I just got some personal problems I needed to deal with. So I left briefly, and it obviously replaced the guitarist, which were problems with the bass player. They needed a bass player. Yeah. And asked me because I knew the set inside out, and it was a nice thing to do to move from guitar to playing rhythm section. And I'm happier at the end of every gig.
Ray, tell me what it's like playing something like the Swedish Rock Festival. I've seen a number of your videos from Demon's days playing at like the Swedish Rock Festival. It looks like you're incredibly well received. What's it like actually in front of a whole group of like a huge audience, and they've all got their devil horns up and whatever is that what it's called, devil horns? But what's it like playing to a festival that's wholly and solely focused on hard rock or heavy metal?
And it was certainly the biggest gig I'd ever done in my life, and there was thousands of people in the audience, all screaming and all singing along, and giving the cymbal. It was great. Yeah. It's a great feeling, and it's nice to see that you are appreciated and that people do respect and love what you do, which is the music. People ultimately go and see a band. Great feeling, yeah.
And are they young, Ray? Is it a young crowd, or is it just older guys?
Well, no, I mean it's a really mixed crowd, I have to say, young and old. We've met many people over the years who've newly discovered Demon and find this kind of very feast of wonderful music to go back, because they've made quite a few albums. Demon, quite a catalogue of back material. Yeah, we've met lots of new fans along the way, but then you get your hardcore fans that remember Demon from the 1980s, and abroad, a lot of them have always wanted to see Demon, because in the early days, Demon never got to play.
Yeah. So with you supported Kiss, you were telling me at the wedding. That Kiss was one of the big supports that you guys did.
Well, we
what
played
was that
the same
like?
rock festival. We were on with them. I'm a huge Kiss fan, as were several other members of the band. It's quite funny. I went to see Kiss the other night. They were great. But yeah,
they're great fun.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
We
were lucky enough. Dave Cottrell, the other guitarist in Demon, and myself were big fans, and we managed to get on the stage and crawl all over Eric Singer's drum kit, and have a around and without getting told off too much. It was brilliant. And then we were in the kind of VIP area when we went on stage, so we got to watch them real up close perform. That was in 2013. Doing the Monster show then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just doing anything like that is a great
tour?
experience, because Deep Purple have played, and Gary Moore and Glenn Hughes and Lynyrd Skynyrd and Rush and ZZ have done these festivals when all these bands have played. It's a great honour and a great pleasure to be there and do it, But Demon are off to Spain in about a week to do a huge rock festival there, and Kiss are on again there, so they're on with them again in about, I think it's just over a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Spain's great for that sort of thing.
Yeah, Spain and South America is the other place where metal and that heavy rock sort of is still big, isn't it?
Yeah, and we've had a lot of interest from South America. We've had a couple of opportunities to Brazil, and I know there's quite a few. Logistically, it was always very difficult to manage, because it's a 6-piece band to manage. It's 7 people flying, and it's not
costs a lot of
always
money.
easy to do it, but I know if they get the opportunity, they will definitely.
Yeah. So what's your future now, Ray? Where does Ray Where does Ray Walmsley go now? So you're no longer.
Well, I've children with different, conditions like ADHD and similar things. So I get a lot of satisfaction out of doing that. And I'm currently working on doing a big performance with at Victoria Hall in Stoke, which is this famous local venue where all the bands like Judas Priest and Van Halen have played in times gone by. So we're doing a concert there next Friday, actually. And the kids that I teach and are going on there and doing a big performance. So I get a lot of pleasure from that. It's a very rewarding job. And it's music, music.
Oh, fantastic, man.
That's great.
I mean, I've never made a great deal of money out of anything that I've done, but I'm happy and I'm proud of the things that I've done. And the job that I do gives me a level of satisfaction that wouldn't get in an ordinary job, because you're having an impact and making changes in people's lives that hopefully are positive. And music's a wonderful thing to do that with. So,
very much so. Yeah. Very much.
Ray,
so.
we've had a few people guests on the show who have worked with kids with some problems and stuff, and it's just a wonderful thing. I think it's fantastic that you do that.
Honourable.
We're really big supporters of that on this channel.
Absolutely. Ray, we've had some technical hiccups along the way, but I really do appreciate you taking the time and sharing some of the insights into that wave of music that came out with the heavy metal. It was a real pleasure to meet you at the wedding that I attended in Leek. I still get blown away the connections that you can make out of music. And, who would have thought that the wedding singer of the wedding that I was going to was going to be a guy who spent 24 years in one of the important bands that came out of the British new wave heavy metal scene. So I thank you very much for taking the time today, Ray. It's been a real pleasure.
Absolutely has.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you so
much. It's
much,
my pleasure
Ray.
too. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much for asking.
Well, I hope that those gremlins and ghosts from the internet didn't impact you too much. I hope that you can really see that we enjoyed the conversation with Ray, and we look forward to getting him back. If you have enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching this podcast, and please leave a review because it really does help us get found. Now, you can find us on YouTube by a quick search of Unfiltered and Undiscovered. We've got our Facebook page. We're on TikTok as well. We've also consolidated everything on our website at unfilteredandundiscovered.com. All the music that we discuss and talk about on the show gets added to our playlist on Spotify. And once again, it's just so easy. Just do a search of Unfiltered Undiscovered. Our podcast will come up, of course, but also the Unfiltered and Undiscovered playlist. I hope that, as per usual, you've enjoyed the episode, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.
A secret handshake in a darkened room. Screaming eagles, sounding young, a pipe Christian perfume. The smell of Cuban drifting through the air. Passes through me on its head, a cold and deadly stare. The master of disguise in the art of deception. He calls the chosen few to the altar of conception. He goes to the light behind the light. strikes midnight. Long black limousine. Open to the driveway. Look a dance except for she. The master of disguise. In the art of deception. He calls a chosen few to the altar of consumption. He comes to the light, he hides, and the light. He comes to the vision from hell. The devil rides out this time into the night. The devil rides out this time under a full moon sky. The devil he rides, the devil he rides, the devil he rides into the night. The devil he rides, the devil he rides, the devil he rides into the night.
Hey y'all, I'm Allison Asarch from Nashville, Tennessee.
Hey, I'm Sean Fraser from the Ritzy Kids.
Hunters, this is Johnny from Rail Motor.
Hey, it's Shane from Blind Season.
Hey, it's Rob Stanier, and you can check out my music on all the streaming platforms.
Check out my latest music on all the streaming sites.
Check out my debut album on all streaming platforms.
Check out our new debut album.
Check us out on Spotify and Apple Music. And you're listening to our friends, Braggy and Curly.
My favorite bands from Australia.
My two favourite podcasters,
Braggy and Curly.
Braggy and Curly
On the
Unfiltered and Undiscovered podcast.